A very warm welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. We have our next installment of our digital mastermind with James Oakley, who's the founder of James Oakley Media. He's one of our partners and has been providing incredible insights around digital strategy, return on investment when it comes to anything digital, which I think you can all agree this is something we cannot avoid for our businesses. You need to be on the playing field in order to really maximize on what's available in terms of digital returns for your business. So today we are going to be talking about the 7 things that every business owner should know when they are formulating their digital strategy for 2022. I know James is also going to be touching on some Black Friday elements as well as some Green Friday elements. So he's got a really insightful presentation planned for us today. But as I said before, please do ask questions, be interactive, in order to maximize this session. Don't hold back if you've got questions. I'm going to spotlight James so that when he shares his screen, we don't have anyone else jumping in. So James, over to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great, thank you very much. And hello, everyone. I know you're already some of you definitely familiar with me, so in that sense I won't bore you too much with any details about what we do, but as Michelle said, obviously everything that we do is very much focused on return on investment and actually how you can build your business digitally, especially now given obviously that the digital presence of a lot of companies has stayed much higher than it was versus pre-pandemic, even if that started to begin evening out a bit as people sort of venture out more. So still extremely important, and obviously for all companies really, but as in especially say for us guys in this room, any digital that we do have has got to be measured in terms of ROI and not say just how many people have seen a particular post. It actually has to result in leads or sales depending on your company, and obviously company growth as well. The other part actually which has come recently, at least certain to us, is people who actually need to have a much bigger digital presence in order to reach the next step, whether that's with their business in terms of an investment or whether it's in terms of, as an example, being listed at retailers or a supermarket for food and drinks brands, things like that. So again, I'll sort of touch on ways you can potentially do that at points throughout this, but that is also a third area to sort of consider, which obviously in terms of long-term ROI could be huge if, say, your digital presence gets you that listing in Sainsbury's or a Waitrose or something like that. So well worth thinking about it from that angle as well as the investment side of things. So without further ado, I will go into the slides. As Michelle said, please feel free to stop me at any time. Lastly, just before I do, for anyone who's not familiar with one of my presentations, the reason I'm here on the women's chapter is because we have Lara Morgan, who is an investor in our company, and if any of you know Lara Morgan, if you're not ROI focused, you will be beaten up quite literally. So as I say, that should be an endorsement of the fact that I'm still alive, as to the fact that we do our job quite well. So I'll go into the slides now, and any questions, as I say, please do stop me and let me know if you can't see me sharing my screen in a moment. So I'll just do that now. Yeah. Okay. So that's Michelle, great. Could you let me know?
We can see that. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, so just going into the first slide, as I'm going through it, 7 actionable steps to take for your digital strategy into 2022. But despite that title, the first thing I just want to touch on is 2021. And that's just because obviously Black Friday is super important for a number of reasons, and just generally Q4, and we're obviously well into Q4 now. The 2 samples I've actually got here, the one on the left, Black Friday event coming soon, was actually sent to me in October. So again, rather than Black Friday, we're really looking at Black November. And the one on the right, actually, I received yesterday, which is the 1st of November. So you can see, actually, we talk about Black Friday, but really we're in Black Friday mode now. Companies know people are going to be waiting. Michelle, when we were speaking earlier, we were saying about actually there are those things that you just wait for, and companies are well aware of that, so they want to get those sales in early. And so you might actually find that Black Friday becomes Black November, very much so, and potentially the best deals for certain items come out the second week of November rather than having to wait until the end of the month. So these are all happening now, and I just wanted to say, in terms of very much actually relating to 2022, but people are really looking at the price, the value they can get. So effectively, not necessarily how low the price is, but what value they're getting for their money. And also, depending on the time, once you get more into Christmas, we're really looking at delivery times and speeds as well. So I don't know how many of you in the room are dealing with anything on the Black Friday aspect, but I would say this is obviously something to be well aware of. And what I would consider, especially if you're a product-based business, is if you're not doing, say, something like, as an example, November offers, is having something whereby it might be partway through the month, you have a particular offer, and actually that it matches, and you say guaranteed that the price won't be lower on Black Friday, because that will take away your buyers' worries about effectively purchasing and then the price dropping a week after they've actually bought it. One other sort of element, which I haven't included on here, but a lot of companies are actually jumping in on the idea of Green Friday. And that's where actually they won't do a particular offer on that Black Friday, but actually they'll do something to do with the environment, something that promotes sustainability, for example, planting a tree, something like that. So that's also just worth bearing in mind when you sort of think, actually, am I going to do this? And of course, that really does depend on how important those sales are for you. Depending on your business, it could be that 60% of your sales are in quarter four, or it might be that just 25% are, and you can afford to be that bit more bolshy about it and either do one particular offer or, as I say, not even compete at all. But more and more people are doing it, and this is probably, I would say, going to be sort of one of the peak years. I can imagine, say, in 5 years' time, Black Friday not being as big as it is now, but certainly this is sort of we're at the peak now, especially with the e-commerce drive since the start of the pandemic. So I would make sure you get involved. But on that note, unless anyone has any questions around, say, what they're doing for Black Friday, I will move on to 2022, or actually what you want to be doing now with 2022 in mind.
James, can I just ask a question about Black Friday? Because I know that for many independent brands, discounting is a problem, and particularly in the product space, there've been, with all of the challenges over the last 18 months, logistical issues around components and ingredients, that kind of thing. So to discount now could be something that's really difficult for a lot of brands when they're really looking to kind of capture as much margin as they can. Are there other things? Are you seeing a change in what people might offer for Black Friday? Does it always have to be a discount, or do you have experience of any other sort of unique offerings that mean you still get to be involved, but not necessarily have to cut into your margin?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one, I mean, the good thing is of the three sort of biggest areas that people are looking for, which is that price element, the value element, and then the shipping and delivery, two of the three aren't effective. You can effectively not cut your prices and still compete on the value and the shipping and delivery aspects. So with that, I would certainly be looking at, and what brands do look at, is actually effectively bundling and giving more value, so that actually you keep that core margin, but because people are buying more, effectively they receive that, what is in their minds a discount, but actually for you, you're selling more items, and therefore you can afford to have that slightly less margin on each item or service, because actually you're selling 3 or 4 items or services in that sense. And certainly for us, as an example, in a services business, the cost, as an example, of really good digital players in the industry is going up. And that's because, again, brands are more online now. They want the best, and actually that effectively costs us more money as well. And in that sense, therefore, what we want to do is, obviously, in the ideal world, we can mitigate passing that cost on to our clients that we work with, where we work with them, say, in 2 or 3 different areas as opposed to just one. So again, it's about giving them that value, which also allows you to keep prices, say, at where they are, or at margins you need to effectively have a profitable business running into 2022. So I wouldn't be scared of saying, oh, we have to do an offer, But what I would say is that your competitors most likely, or at least some of them, will be doing an offer. So it's all about doing, where do you lie in that aspect? And it might be that if you're a very premium brand, actually, you don't want to do that discounting, and your customers will buy anyway. So let's give them something that's really great value instead, because actually that's what they're going to want to get on, and they don't mind the fact that they're paying, say, for a premium product, because that's why they love your business in the first place. So yeah, that would be the biggest sort of cutback if you still want to compete in Black Friday, but not actually say we're going to take 35% off all of our products. But some people no doubt will. So again, it's about your industry. I'm certainly not an overall fan of it. But the fact that people are sort of doing more like Black November, that's another way you can sort of play that game, in that, again, you don't have to cut prices across your whole site. It could be, say, a couple of very special value offers, and you may even choose to only offer it to a specific set of your customers, or something like that. So yeah, that's what I'd sort of say on that note. But people will be cutting prices. I don't think you should feel that you have to, unless you have very specific revenue targets you need to meet.
Right. Yeah, I received a couple of emails in the last few days about special loyalty programs that are launching just for November. So rather than discounting, it's more about giving your customer base benefits for supporting you in November. So I think there are different ways to still engage and be involved, but without necessarily having to slash prices.
Yeah, and slashing prices is something nobody actually wants to do. It's a case of actually you're competing against effectively the lowest level of competitor in that sense. So if you can avoid it, or if you do it, as I say, in a value-based way, you can actually technically give somebody and make somebody feel like they're getting a great deal, which they are, but you still keep your margins. So yes, I would keep on that. The only other thing just to note is, obviously, if you're stocked on Amazon, just try to match what Amazon are doing with your product if they're offering, say, a particular discount on it, only because, of course, Amazon is so good on the delivery front. You need reasons to also buy direct to consumer from you, because they will just choose Amazon because it is so good in that sense as well. So just try to match that.
Thank you.
No worries. So on to next year, but as I say, all of this actually still applies to as an example, the end of this month and Christmas. So feel free to implement early and actually test this before, as an example, Black Friday or Christmas period, especially because after the 14th of December, it will go quieter. So certainly now is a good time to test, and then you're ready for January to really kick everything off. So just to go through, personalizing your product or service. So again, I mentioned Lara earlier, and of course this is an example here, just actually of a blend finder where you can actually answer questions to find your ideal product or service. And additionally, just here in terms of on the right hand side, we've got a quiz which is done by Morley Rituals, and Anita is a member of the women's chapter here. Really lovely brand. And you can just see here how you answer questions and get your product or service recommended based on what your answers are. So that's something which I think everybody should be doing already, really, but certainly next year, again, that's going to become even more important. Personalization in e-commerce was the big thing, say, a year ago. If you're not doing it next year, you're certainly going to be behind the curve. But it doesn't mean necessarily that you have to have a completely personalized service like these. It might be, say, for example, actually you have different options within your product list which cater to different types of people. So you might have a bundle for a particular type of person. Taking that into a direct example, Michelle, if we were doing something, say a product from the women's chapter, you might have a bundle for businesses in the skincare and health industry and a bundle for businesses in the food and drink industry, things like that. So that's an example of how you can personalize your product or service by literally saying who it's for. So you don't necessarily have to implement, say, an app on Shopify or WordPress if you don't want to. There are other ways you can do it, but certainly if people are actively involved in, let's say, filling out questions and then have a recommended product, that is always going to increase your conversion rate. And that's pretty much across the board, whether it's service-based or product-based. Certainly on e-commerce, just because it's so easy to quickly buy, that conversion rate is massively increased by having something which actually allows people to choose what they want, choose their answers, and get recommended a product. It's like going into a store and having somebody actually recommend something based on your personal preferences. So that's always really important. And I would say this was actually number 7 on my list this morning. And I went through the presentation again, and I thought, actually, this needs to go to number one, because personalization is going to be really important, because without that, everything else is going to be low. Your Facebook ads won't convert as well if you don't have personalization on your website. Your SEO that brings in people to your website won't work as well if your website isn't personalized to the type of people who come onto your website pages. So really, it has gone to number one. And the thing that people can worry about, and this leads quite nicely actually onto point two, is that it's going to be too much work, but actually it's a case of doing that work once, and then that personalization runs for you literally for the whole of 2022. So I'd really say, for example, doing this early now will help you back in March 2022, but there's no additional work to do except monitoring results and then potentially changing it based on what's best performing. And that really goes straight through to my second slide, which is just here on automating as much personalization as you can do. And so what I've got here is an example, a couple of automations based on if somebody had nearly purchased a product at checkout, but at the last minute decided not to. And effectively what you'll see here is that actually the personalization and type of email for their abandoned cart that they get. Michelle, is that big enough for your screen, by the way? I will send this round after.
Yeah, it is a little small, but that also could be because my eyes are not great.
But basically, in short, these automations, they change based on if you've looked at a men or a women's collection on a particular page, and also the value of their cart. So you might have somebody who abandons their cart of, let's say, over £100. You might want to offer them something of value in your abandoned cart email, which automatically goes out if their cart's over £100. It says if you spend £150, you get X free on top. And that's a value offer, again, relating to Black Friday, that you don't need to worry about cutting those prices. It's almost about bundling. Whereas what you might say is that if somebody spent less than £50, actually you're going to offer them free shipping, because we know that we don't give free shipping on £50 or less, and that's a major barrier to them purchasing. So that's something which you can actually automate now, whether you use, the example I've used here is Clavier. You can use MailChimp, you can use any email client, and MailChimp is free for up to your first 500 subscribers as well. So this doesn't necessarily cost you anything, and if you're already paying for an email marketing platform, it's not going to cost you any more, and it's something that you should be doing. And again, it's that case of, like with that personalization on your website, actually this work is done now and it's going to benefit you for the next year, despite not having to do any further work on it unless you would like to. So you might want to change an email or have a special offer. But again, it's worth everything doing now, automating it, and that frees up your time massively in your business, or your staff's time, depending on the size of your company, to actually focus on other things. So it's almost like a mini project, and once it's done, that will quite literally bring you in revenue and profits for the rest of the year and free up you or your staff's time. So it's really a win-win, especially given that actually we're going to really want to compete on digital next year. So the more time we can free up for ourselves to compete against competitors, get more brand awareness, that's literally, again, putting more money in our pockets in the future. So I definitely focus on really automating as much of that as you can. And again, feel free to send me an email if you're not sure what platform to use. I'll happily pick that up and just send you over a couple of examples which might be useful to you depending on the size of your business.
James, I know that you advocate split testing a lot. Is that something you would do for your personalization as well? Would you have two different kinds of surveys or two different quizzes to test which one is getting the most engagement?
Yeah, completely. So again, in that sense, with, say, personalization, you test the conversion rate, and then, as I say, you might literally split test sending ads to two different types of quizzes. So one might be, say, what type of product is for you, and actually one might say compare yourself to other people who are similar. So we did something directly on targeting C-level executives and high-level professionals in their fields, and when we A/B split tested, the quiz which actually was really engaging to them was compare yourself against other C-level executives. That was sort of the line that we used, and that very much, because there's a competing element, then effectively those men and women actually, it really resonated with them and the engagement rate was far higher. So yes, absolutely, that would be almost like the next stage of, once you've begun to automate, you see your results coming through, and of course you think, how can we make this better? And then that's where you'll go and test, and you can say, okay, we sent this to 1,000 people, 500 each, what have actually been the results? And then you can effectively choose your winning email to go forward. And again, that's just going to make your business better and better over time, and brings in effectively more sales, more customers. And actually, the more you automate it and make it personalized, it will bring you in more raving fans who also recommend your product or service to other people. So it sort of like steamrolls the better you actually perform on the digital element. So yes, super important. And as Michelle mentioned, once you've got this up and running, A/B split testing is going to be, and ABC split testing is going to be what takes your business to that next level. But certainly these are the foundations to build from. Number 3, and this is where we sort of get a bit more into just actually direct things you can do today, which are very fast. So the personalization elements, just briefly, most important things long term, but certainly on things you can action, let's say today. Shipping and delivery, especially obviously if you're an e-commerce based product brand. 90% of customers, shipping speed, super important. And effectively in that sense, you need to make sure that if at all possible, you have a next day delivery option and a 3 to 5 day delivery option. Not only because actually it gives people that peace of mind, it allows you to compete, say, with Amazon if they're stocking yours or your competitor products, but also because it gives you more revenue margin when people do choose that next day delivery, because people naturally expect it to be more expensive. So you can charge and make a profit off that if you want to. So again, it gives you a little bit more bandwidth to play with your pricing, because you can make some money potentially on delivery as well. And then just some stats here. And actually, this is a good year old, so I think it would likely be higher. But basically, 88% of people say that Amazon shipping options have increased their expectations of other brands. And it's just a case of, they understand you're not Amazon, but actually if it's a case of getting something tomorrow versus in 5 days' time for at least the same price, then there's a good chance they're going to choose Amazon, unless they're very determined to purchase directly from you, which is great, but that might only cover 25% of your customers, depending on what your company is. So we want to effectively have a 1 day shipping option and a 3 to 5 day shipping option. And again, if you can offer that 1 day, again, focusing on value, when somebody spends a certain amount with you, actually that's going to allow you to compete with Amazon also. And the reason I keep coming back to competing on Amazon is just because Amazon's customer service is so great. Everybody is searching on Amazon because they know actually they might go and find a brand on Google, go and search it straight on Amazon because they know they can get it delivered the next day. So if I've got a next day delivery option, I'm going to have an announcement bar on my website, probably at least half of the time, depending what I'm testing, something around next day shipping is available, something like that, just because it allows people to immediately have that concern of the delivery issues taken away. And if you can offer that for free as well, let's say when somebody spends over £100, for example, then that puts you in an even stronger position. Of course, you get the additional margins and customer data that you don't with Amazon. I'm not saying, by the way, don't list with Amazon, because it's a really good product base to have. And of course, it gives you a huge audience. But of course, if you can get those additional margins, have that additional customer data, that's going to help you as a business massively in the long term, because you will learn so much more. And then also just a note to say, actually, that delivery period, so people want a free option, and that's great. But that delivery period of getting the delivery before, as an example, last Christmas send date, or before, let's say, a birthday, Valentine's Day, whatever it might be, that at those times in the week beforehand, that overtakes the want for a free shipping option, effectively the ability to actually ship the product in time. So again, if you're well stocked, especially now coming up to Black Friday, when so many companies aren't because they have massive shipping delays or huge increases in cost, you can really compete better against your competitors by having those additional options that they simply won't have at this time. So again, look and see, play with that delivery option, see if you can actually get that free if somebody spends over a certain amount. And actually, this is on the final slide, but it is related. You can even potentially up the prices of your product if you're not bound by retailers, and put free delivery and go and test effectively if each of your products is £2 more expensive. Will people buy more because actually it's free delivery, as opposed to if everything's slightly less expensive, but actually you have to pay £3.50 for delivery. So well worth on the A/B testing, introducing something like that as well. Then value, and I'm going to go very briefly on this slide because I have a really good example, but effectively testing different bundles, upselling at checkout, split testing, like we said, Michelle, on offers, and actually, if you're manually fulfilling, upselling after checkout. So if you don't have a warehouse that's picking and packing automatically orders for you, actually go out and follow up and have an automation on those customers that offers them an upsell post checking out, that if they purchase again within 24 hours, actually they'll get a specific, let's say, value-based or discount offer, because actually often they will do because their product's already coming to them. So it won't cost them any more for delivery, and it allows you, as somebody who's likely quite small if you're manually fulfilling, to have a competitive advantage against people who are larger because they simply can't do that. So that's well worth testing. But on the subject of small versus large companies, here's a large company that does it really, really well. So this is a spa, and it's going to be perhaps a little small, but what you'll see here is underneath where it says your shopping basket, it's upselling me a pillow mist already. It's told me I've qualified for 2 free samples when I've spent at least £30. And it's telling me that it's already applied a discount to that pillow mist, which I've put in my basket. So I've literally gone to the checkout page with one item, which was a £55 Pro Skin Serum. And I've ended up actually purchasing an additional pillow mist and getting a free sample. So I've spent more and I've got my value, but actually my basket value has gone up from £55 to £65. And when we're looking at average order value, if that was the average person, that's an increase of nearly 20%. So by doing that and having this type of a checkout page, if that was the average, then they have increased their average order value by 20% nearly for every single person who visits their website, just by offering free samples and a discount at checkout for an additional, less expensive product. So I'd go and have a look on the Aspire page if you want to actually have a look at a company who's doing this really, really well. I would highly recommend, and actually they're a really nice company to have a look at and sort of see what you can implement from that, because it doesn't have to be as good, but if it's nearly as good, then you're certainly going to be having an improvement on what you're doing now if you're not already upselling at checkout in one way or another. So definitely use Aspire as a direct example of something which you can aspire to do with your company and website.
James, do you have any advice for service-based businesses?
Yeah.
How they can add value, or, like sort of, is there any example that might apply to this, but for a service-based business?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can think of one right away, and that's us, James Oakley Media. So to give a true direct example, like I mentioned earlier on the value aspect, because there has been an increase, as an example, in the cost of digital players in the industry, but we actually have tried not to increase prices. When we actually go and we're in discussions with a company about beginning with them, effectively it's having those options of, here's actually effectively what we need at a minimum to work with you in order to do a good job. And that's effectively the same as having the product that somebody wants for their solution. So we provide them the solution. Then there's effectively those additionals whereby actually if somebody wants to move faster, or if they've got very specific goals that they need to achieve, let's say in a particularly short period of time, that actually you can have additional support that's provided, whether that's in terms of, say, a different part of their digital marketing, which they didn't know they needed help with, for example, or actually they have wanted help for ages, but nobody's mentioned it. Then obviously something that we would do straight away is actually we would bring down the cost of those 2 individual services to make it more appealing, but also more achievable for that business or company to do. So certainly in that way, it's almost like bundling, whereby you provide more value, and that means that effectively nobody's cutting prices and actually they're saving money, but it allows you to retain your revenue at where it is. So certainly in that sense, yes. The other thing, of course, depending on if your service is, say, more of a one-off service, would be to actually throw in additional value. So if say we were a website design only company, it might be that actually within that you threw in hosting for a year, so that somebody didn't have to worry about setting up their hosting once you'd built their website. Or you might even put in something like, as the equivalent of an upsell, we would also do 2 full audits of your website over the next year for let's say it would cost you £300 to do, actually only for £200 or something like that. So that, again, there's various ways you could effectively upsell as a services business. But I mean, being honest, if you're a services business and you're doing a great job for your companies that you're working with, there's no harm in asking them 3 to 6 months in, actually, how else can we help you? Because they've seen the great results you've already got. So I would almost say a typical upsell, certainly from our point of view, would be almost that 3 to 6 months in, whereby we can actually say, look, we've shown, as an example, we've doubled your ROI from Google ads. We know we can do the same from, let's say, what you're investing in Facebook ads, and then naturally that can come across because you already have that level of trust and a relationship. So that's definitely what I'd be sort of thinking there. But certainly at the start, there's no harm in offering that all bells and whistles option, because actually some people, especially say if you're working with companies who have been recently funded or have particular growth ambitions or goals, they want to achieve those quickly. So if you can give them a quick way to do that and save them some money on doing it at the time, then that's everybody wins, and that's the ideal scenario, certainly in the services space as well.
Brilliant, thanks. And I think another point on the services side, and I mean, and the same applies to product, is also communication and consumer engagement, because there's no point in spending money promoting your services from a digital perspective and then not having really good processes in place in terms of how you respond and get back to people. Yeah, because I think particularly at the moment, with how short-staffed a lot of businesses are, particularly service businesses, there is a huge amount of frustration around the communication piece and reaching out and not ever being able to get hold of someone, or not being able to, or not getting a response to your email or your query. And I think many of us are guilty of that, not considering the customer experience and making sure that those processes are as tight and fast as possible.
No, you're completely right. And actually, again, 2 direct examples. So we actually have sort of a rule, which is a reply within 2 hours, even if it's just to say, thank you, I've received this, I will get back to you this afternoon. And additionally, we have a slide in our introductory decks, actually, which talk about what we do that is different and added value. So as an example, we're available on Saturdays, whereas most digital agencies are only Monday to Friday. So that service level is absolutely important. And finally, actually, just because Karina's on the call, and this just, obviously, I know where you can offer where you're more of a personalized service, you can add additional value, which say is very, very rare in your industry. For example, if you let's say have particular experience of working within a country, or you grew up in a particular country, things like that. If there's things you can offer which are almost additional to your product or service, that actually when people decide to work with you, you will give them some of your advice, whether it's a cultural training, in Karina's case, something else on top of that, then that's potentially going to be something which pushes them over the line, and they really want that. And that's actually not necessarily what they're buying, but actually the fact that they get that on top massively increases the likelihood that they'll want to work with you.
Fantastic, thank you.
So then I'm bearing in mind time, so I will move through this slide quite quickly, but begin search engine optimization sooner rather than later. And the reason I say that is because depending on where you are as a business, it is now, versus, as an example, this time last year, more expensive to advertise on the biggest online channels. And so with that in mind, if you can get found organically, let's say within Google search without paying, that's going to help you at the start of growing your business to actually build up some initial traffic, revenue, or leads, depending on the type of company you run, rather than you having to spend immediate budget just to get seen before you even know, as an example, how your website best works, which A/B tests have worked, how best to get people to sign up to your database. So I would definitely focus on SEO. And in that sense, just to some initial ways of how, writing niche content, because other people won't write about it as much, and that's a place you can get ranked in quickly within Google. Building relevant partnerships and backlinks with companies who are non-competitors but have your sets of customers. That's something which is major. So let's say, for example, just thinking off the top of my head, if you were S-Spa and you weren't in spas, if you had a partnership with a famous, let's say, or well-known spa, actually that clearly gives you a massive audience, but that spa is not a competitor because you don't offer the same product. Additionally, as I say, this is all built around not having a high budget, but what you can do is also use your LinkedIn network and actually have interviews and transcribe those interviews with well-known people in your industry. And the reason I say that is because often people are quite keen to be featured, let's say, on somebody else's website, and it gives them something to shout about effectively on their own LinkedIn or their own website because they've been featured, let's say, on your podcast or on your video interview, or even just a written interview, for example. And that way, actually, they're sending their traffic to your website because, again, it's a win-win situation in that they have something which makes them look good and an expert in their field, and you have someone who is an expert in their field who's on your website featured and actually is sending people to your website or sending a backlink to your website, which is going to help you with Google. And again, as always, just to show you a direct example, unfortunately, again, with Kitbricks, I can do this, is Kitbricks USA. So this is our USA-based website. And in that essence, it's a completely new site from kitbricks.com, which is UK-based. It's almost a starting from scratch project we began a couple of years ago. And Kitbricks is a company which focuses for swimmers, runners, swimmers, runners and cyclists. But of course, swimming, running and cycling together makes up a triathlon. And so lots of triathletes and people who compete in things like Ironman actually buy Kitbricks products because that's who they're built for. So what we effectively did was we wrote some niche content, which is Ironman versus triathlon, the ultimate guide. And then within that content, we had particular things and around headings on the Ironman versus triathlon length, Ironman versus triathlon training, recovery, and these are all headings that people are searching in Google, and we of course did our research. As a result of that, how that actually plays out is that if you type in triathlon versus Ironman, actually in the UK or the US now, kitbricksusa.com is the first listing on Google's organic rankings, and there you can see actually it even has an excerpt, so it's a featured snippet. You can see this article was written back in March 2020, and actually it's still there at number 1. How that relates into rankings, and again, I'll send these slides through so you can zoom in, but in the US, as an example, there's 800 people a month who search triathlon versus Ironman, and we are number 1 for that search term. There's 350 who search it the other way round, and we're number 1. And there's loads of other examples, such as difference between Ironman and triathlons, Ironman race length, how long is a triathlon, where that particular article is listed, and actually we're ranked on effectively on that first page of Google, but actually in this case, lots of places we're ranked number 1 in Google. So that gives us lots of traffic because we've written about a very niche subject in an expert way. So that is something I would directly say to you guys, you can definitely apply that to your businesses because you will have some kind of a USP, and the USP is what you want to write about. And that's where you can be very niche because it is a USP, not many other people are going to be actually writing about it. So in that sense, that's a good way to get immediate traffic. And the ideal thing is, let's say in Kitbricks' case, we sell to Ironman triathlete entrants, we sell to swimmers, runners to cyclists. That's exactly the type of people who will be researching Ironman versus triathlon, Ironman race length, how long is a triathlon. So you're targeting the right type of people. And then you can use, as an example, your Facebook ads retargeting to actually come back and target them with specific based ads, which are actually personalized because we already know they're interested in triathlons and Ironmans. So it allows us to actually produce better based Facebook or Google ads just because we've written and got ranked well on Google. So that's a direct example of how you can take that and actually turn it into traffic and, more importantly, obviously, revenue. And again, there's no use in having 10,000 visitors every day or week if nobody's buying. So it's got to be relevant, but make sure that you niche it at the start. And once you've built up more, you can become less niche, of course. Michelle, any questions just on this? Only because it is a direct example. Is there anything around that you wanted to go over?
No, I mean, I think that's really clear and quite inspiring, really, that that's something all of us could be doing. It just requires a bit of consideration and really understanding your niche.
Yeah, and the last thing on that actually is, because again, I know that a reasonable proportion of people who are attending, as an example, this class, you're at that startup and growth stage of your business. Kitbricks USA is very much that same. You can it's effectively no different from your website. And what I mean by that is kitbricks.com was established, but Kitbricks USA actually is a completely new website. It had to regain it or build its authority within Google right from the start. And so actually you can do this. This isn't something which has had a huge, tens of thousands of budget behind it or anything like that. This is actually something which everybody can do. So it's very achievable, and that's why it's so actionable. Like, you could go and start this afternoon. And then lastly, just learning how to compete with Google and Facebook ads. I've included Amazon on here as well, because actually, of course, they're an important player, but we don't actually specialize in Amazon ourselves. So there's limited amounts of knowledge that I can give on that. But certainly with Google and Facebook ads, the simple goal really is to get more clicks than your competitors. So whether it's on Google and you're coming up for a particular search term, or actually whether it's on Facebook and you're competing with a particular audience, as an example, people who are interested in holistic spas, you need to be being more engaging than your competitors. And video is a major way to do that. If you can't afford to produce some really great and engaging video, and I realize that's not always possible, swipeable images are generally more engaging than, say, a single image, things like that. And also something which really works well is having niche targeting and ad copy. So as an example, on Facebook, you can target people who have children aged between 4 and 12. So you can target people who have children aged between 13 and 17. So with that, you can actually say, okay, I want to target people who are aged who have children aged between 13 and 17. And in my ad copy, I'm going to say something like, have an annoying teenager, and then you can obviously have your product, which obviously, let's say, might offer a solution to that. I don't know what it would be, but that's an example. And I use teenagers because I'm sure they are very annoying. I only have a nearly 2-year-old son, so he's about to get to the terrible twos, but I'm sure that will be easier than teenagers, from what I've been told at least. So that is something which I'd really focus on as well. And then just my final sort of point on here is real examples, and I'll send this slides over, but we used this last month as well, of engaging ads. And again, engaging ads which focus on what people have already done on your website. So this is just an example of specific ads where they've addressed the fact that you've abandoned your cart and then targeted you with an ad on Facebook post that. Finally, just to leave some time for any questions, this is a bonus one, but effectively what you can do to try now. And again, maybe when I send this over, you can literally implement, say, maybe just 1 or 2 of these, but literally test your free delivery conversion rate versus your delivery with cost conversion rate. Test raising your prices and making delivery free if you can, depending on if you're stocked to the retailer. Upsell at checkout, that's something, again, e-commerce focused, these 3 particularly. And then upsell post checkout. This can be something actually which converted to services where it's upselling post, working together for a few months, or even a month, depending on the results you're getting. And then finally, just try reaching out to 25 potential partners who have your customers but are not competitors, and actually see what percentage of those you can build something with, whereby you reach each other's audience, or whether you can actually effectively do something for each other which is beneficial. Because if you see that actually that works out of 5 of 25 come back, then you've got a conversion rate of 20%, and you can almost build your future partnerships knowing for every 10 people you contact, 2 will come back and be guaranteed to do something with. So I will stop there just to leave any time to questions. But again, Michelle, I know I've gone through this slide quickly, so feel free to question me on that.
So I do have a question on the slide where you were talking about video and swipeable images.
Yeah.
What is the relevance, or how successful are GIFs?
Yeah. So I, as a general rule of thumb as such, I don't often use them because I use GIFs more, but I do understand they're easier, again, to create a moving based image. So in that sense, I would say my simple thing would be actually, let's go and test it, because again, they're quite quick to do, they're not costly, and you can do that. So I would say test it, and it might be that's a nice, almost, let's say a nice competitor to your best swipeable images. The only thing with GIFs is you have to make sure you get that quality right, just because otherwise, if you've got anything which isn't pretty much crystal clear, then I certainly wouldn't run it.
Okay. And does anyone else have questions? I can take James off spotlight and we can.
Yeah. I'll stop sharing my screen from it as well so you can see my face better. But yes, please feel free, even if it's say something around your business and what you're planning to do.
I mean, I would be interested to know who is using any form of personalization, actually, because that was something that I thought about earlier on. Perhaps if you are, can you raise a hand? Let's see if we've got any hands raised. No, I don't see any. So, I mean, that's definitely something, because it's been a common theme, I think, throughout all of the digital masterminds that we've been doing with you, James, is that, you know, that customization piece is really important. And more brands are doing it, and it's becoming an expected form of engagement for consumers.
No, it absolutely is. And it does apply whether you're a product or a service-based company. Product, of course, is more obvious, but actually service-based, again, to do it immediately, we could create an ad campaign and a landing page for James Oakley Media focused on food and drink brands. And on that page, we would have brands that we've worked with in the food and drinks industry and personalize it like that, and a testimonial from somebody in the food and drinks industry. So there's no excuse not to do it, because it's only going to get you more clients or more sales on your website. And I'd absolutely look to do that ASAP, because effectively what I've said there around personalization, when we have that conversation in 6 months' time, people will have moved on and be doing it in an even more personalized manner. So we want to effectively get there now so that we don't fall behind, especially because of how competitive digital is becoming.
And for people who are thinking about Christmas, when should Christmas campaigns or content be implemented? Is that something that people should be nailing down now?
Yeah. So generally, yes. Where I would say you need to be careful is if you're choosing to spend money on paid ads, because it is November, it gets very expensive close to Black Friday, because of course everybody's doing it. So if you're not, say, doing Black Friday, but you still have a great Christmas product, it might be an idea to wait until the 1st of December and then really push it, because it's a bit less then. But obviously you still have that competitors from the Christmas delivery. It's just not quite as high as Black Friday. So maybe a good time to test would be now, whereby you've got a few people doing it, and often people doing Black Friday deals early, but it's not that same level. And then you can see effectively how that gifting element is working from an aspect of, let's say, that non-paid, let's say going out to your email database, things like that. Absolutely do it early, and you could have things like, again, early bird value offers, whereby effectively if people choose to support your business early. And by the way, I would definitely bring up the fact that if you're writing that email personally, that it's you writing it, be really personal, it's from you. But if people support you early, then of course they get rewarded as well, because again, then it's a win-win situation.
And I think that personal element, what you just touched on there, is really important, because I think particularly women tend to shy away from the personal brand element, and really putting their own story forward in terms of their business and how they've how they've developed it and what the idea was behind it, and their own personal story. And I think that more and more is becoming really, really important to drive consumer engagement, and that stickiness with your audience is to share your story. Obviously you can temper that, and it doesn't have to be kind of everything laid bare, but I think it's really important for people to understand that you are your business from a personal brand perspective, and that can really drive a lot of loyalty and repeat business and engagement with your consumer base.
Absolutely, and on the subject of women's chapters, obviously a testament to it, but the fact that you are a women-led business is actually going to be an advantage, as in that sense. So there's certainly no harm in bringing it across in what you write and how you engage with people. And certainly if you're a women-led brand who actually is personally engaged with people, that's even better. So no, I would absolutely do it in that sense.
Yeah, and I think just adding those personal touches, because regardless of how big your business gets, like you were talking about, sending out an email that comes from you, and it's written in the first person, and people feel they get that opportunity to be a part of your story, which I think is really important. And there's some brands, in fact, Emmy London, one of the women's chapter brands, does that really well, in terms of if you buy a pair of shoes from her, you get a personalized note from her in the box. and she's a very long-standing successful business, and she still makes the point, even if it's her not necessarily writing that. I know she does write them, but to receive that it's such an important part of the customer journeys, that personalization. And the little cards you get are all cards that she's designed herself, or she's done the drawings, and she makes a point of engaging people in that story and that process. So there are definitely lots of little things that we can be doing to add extra layers and take advantage of being independent businesses where we've got an opportunity to let our personality shine through.
Yeah, no, I've been pretty much full agreement with everything you said there. So yes, absolutely.
Brilliant. Well, does anyone have any questions? We've got a few minutes left, but equally, if you don't, you will be getting the slides, so we'll send those over along with the recording for this. And it may well be that you've got questions afterwards. So as usual, in the follow-up email, I'll include James's email address so that you can get in touch with him and ask any burning questions that you might have, even if it's just a case of kind of how to get started on the SEO piece. Because I think, as you outline, the blog part of that, the majority of us are writing content for our businesses anyway, or we have somebody doing that for us. So just making sure that we're making that content work for us in terms of Google ranking and joining up the dots. So if it's a case that you're doing that already, but you're not seeing the benefits, or you're not quite sure that you're doing things the right way, is it okay for people to get in touch with you, James?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the SEO side of things, but also on the, say, email automation side of things as well, please feel free, and I will, sort of, as I say, immediately give you some helpful go-tos that you can implement from.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I think if we don't have any more questions, we can probably end off there, because everyone could do with an extra few minutes in their day to square away some things. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody, and a massive thank you to you, James, as always. There's so much knowledge in what we've just discussed there today, and I know lots of action points that we can go away with. If you are feeling overwhelmed, drop us a line or respond to the email, and we can give you some pointers as to where the best place is to get started. But I think it's thank you, Sean. There are lots of messages in here with everyone saying thank you. And for those of you that are embarking upon Black Friday and Christmas campaigns and things, best of luck. But know that you do have a resource in James if you need to run anything by him or use him, to sort of acid test anything.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful day. And thank you again, James, for taking the time to put together the presentation for us and making yourself so available for our community.
No, a pleasure. Thank you all for your time, and have a really good run up, and we'll speak post Black Friday.
Brilliant. Bye. Cheers.
Bye.